Thank you for watching this video from the Center for European Studies at Carleton University. This interview was conducted by the Canada-Europe Transatlantic Dialogue and the Center for European Studies, EUCE, at Carleton University. CETD receives funding from the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, and CES receives funding from the EU Commission and Carleton University. The views and opinions are solely those of the speaker and do not reflect the views of the CETD, CES, SHIRC, the EU Commission, or Carleton University.
Hi, this is Alex Schindler from the Center for European Studies at Carleton University. I'm joined today by Dr. Tatjana Muravska. Dr. Muravska is a visiting professor in the Center for European Studies. Her research focus is on social and economic issues in the EU12, including structural reforms and implementation of the EU structural and cohesion funds. Dr. Muravska is a professor of regional and European integration studies at the University of Latvia. So, Dr. Muravska, my first question will be more general. To you, as a director of the Center for European and Transition Studies, why is it important to study European and Transition Studies? Why is it important to study European Union, especially regarding the fact that Baltic States had successfully passed this transition already?
Hello, and thank you very much for the invitation. And the first question is very interesting, and it's also sometimes puzzled to me and to my colleagues at the Center. Well, it is historical background because we built the center when it was very important to start the transition of our country and of the Baltic States, as well as countries of the former Soviet Union, but more on the former social bloc of countries. So the transition is still important, and we can have different interpretations of transitions. However, we're looking at transition from the point of view of indicators and how the economy and societies are progressing, and for that we need, of course, to understand at which stage are the countries, how they're developing according to the criteria set up by international institutions, and the understanding what are the developed, developing and transition economies. So we can, of course, in the Baltic States and former socialist countries, pass this stage of classical transition from common economy to from the planned economy to the and common economy to the market economy. It is past, but still we have a number of countries of the former Soviet Union that are still in the period of transition according to the indicators of international institutions. So it is important to understand what are the criteria, goals, the progress, and the future.
You mentioned this area of former Soviet Union states, and the biggest EU neighbor is Russian Federation, and it actually is providing now its own economic project, the Eurasian Economic Union, and it declares that it is a sort of alternative for European Union. So my question is, do you think is this project successful, and if so, to what extent, and what should be the relations between European Union and Eurasian Economic Union? Cooperation, rivalry?
Very interesting question. However, there is no precise answer. Well, again, I would like to continue that as a center we're studying the economies of the former Soviet Union, well, of course, including Russia and the transition period. So it's very interesting what paths these economies are choosing, whether they would like to have more integration with the European Union, or they would like to join Eurasian Union for obvious reasons, because there is a territorial dimension, and of course such countries as Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan, these are Asian countries that do not belong to Europe and cannot be members of the European Union. However, the story about the Eurasian Union is, of course, the tendency to have cooperation among regional economies. And one of the biggest and the leading one is Russia, as its territory is in Europe, and the territory is also in Asia. What is the progress of development? It seems that the Eurasian Union is developing according to the standards, if I may say, in quotation marks, or criteria that are relevant to the integration levels. So we can look, for example, at European Union, at Eurasian Union. They have some similarities. Also, Russian Federation dominance, for example, in decision-making process, in the voting system, for the moment is dominant. Well, if the criteria is the size and population, then it is obvious. These economies are also passing all the levels of integration, as it was the case of the European Union. And it seems, according to the information that they provided, they are progressing, as I already mentioned. As for the cooperation with the European Union, yes, there might be very good cooperation, not necessarily between the both trading blocs, because we don't have in the history a very bright experience of how, for example, customs union cooperate with each other. We more have the sort of bilateral, trilateral, for example, integration issues or cooperation issues between the countries. There is a possibility, however, now we are living in the time of political and economic difficulties everywhere in the world, and including Asia and Europe. That's why there are many controversial trends that exclude a fruitful cooperation for the moment, but nevertheless, in the future, there might be some positive developments.
Happy to hear that you are positive. I would like to come back to this notion of regional cooperation, and I would like to ask you, what do you think about the Visegrád Group? It's a group of the 4 Central European states with common Soviet communist past: Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, and Slovakia. This organization was established in 1993 in order to mutual help for joining the EU. This goal was successfully completed in 2004. So my question is, what is the aim for existing of this group now? And because you are from the Baltic region, and there is another regional cooperative group, the Baltic Assembly. So is it possible to compare these two regional organizations?
Oh yes, you are quite right with this question, and there are definitely link and possibility to cooperate, to compare the activities of both regional groupings, I would say. However, why I said the groupings, because in a way how Visegrád 4 countries present themselves and the Baltic Assembly, for example, present itself, it's a little bit different. They were all developed or launched about the same period of time, when there was need to stress the existence of these countries and their independence from the socialist ideas and socialist bloc, and independence in their national identities, so on and so forth. However, Visegrád 4 never announced themselves as international institutions, and the Baltic Assembly said that they are an international institution. And all these groupings, in a way, are similar, for example, to the Nordic Council countries, or even Visegrád was thinking that they might develop something as Benelux countries. So such developments, regional developments, exist, and they have all rights for the existence. The initial idea that is still there, it is to provide security, to ensure security, and to have close cooperation with transatlantic organizations and transatlantic institutions. So that was a regional idea that is still there. And especially in nowadays, when, as I mentioned in the previous, my answer to your question, we have very complicated developments all around the world, including Europe, and we can see that, for example, Visegrád countries recently focused on migration issues in the European Union, and they had a number of summits and declarations devoted to migration issues. Well, the Baltic States, they do not discuss that intensively, immigration. However, this is also an issue, of course. And the Baltic countries, they focus now on security, on the economic development. And that is also very interesting. We can see, for example, when the Baltic Assembly is united in terms of political issues and security issues, then they are not always very well working together when it comes to economic issues. They are more competitors rather than tend to cooperate with each other. However, all these countries, the Visegrád and also the Baltic States countries, they are members of the European Union. So the initial ideas, they are still there. However, with the integration to the European Union, more security is provided to these countries and economic development, and that's why, as the members of the European Union, they have the common goals and common tasks. At the same time, can keep in mind that these countries, Visegrád and the Baltic States, they countries that start to develop democracy at the end of 80s and also showing their independence. And the understanding of the democracy is still seems to be different in the older member states and in the newer member states in the European Union. So that's why we probably see now the differences in the position of the older member states, for example, towards the refugee crisis, and the position of the Visegrád 4 countries.
One of the suggestions of Visegrád Group was to promote cooperation with particular former Soviet Union states that are called Eastern Partnership. What is the position of Baltic Assembly?
Thank you. We in the Baltic States, we very much support the Visegrád countries' initiative to stress cooperation and to promote relations with the European Union. We have very positive developments as signed agreements. Now they are active, deep and comprehensive trade agreements with these countries. We also do at the government levels quite a lot. And for example, Latvia in its presidency in the European Union in 2015 stressed this issue as one of the priorities. And we had a very big conference at the government levels, high officials as well as the researchers attending the conference in Riga on Eastern Partnership. So we do all possible Visegrád countries and the Baltic Assembly, which is the sort of developments among the parliaments in the Baltic countries, which means that the parliaments and people support the Eastern Partnership countries. So this is quite similar to the Visegrád, what is done by the Baltic Assembly, particular countries, particular people, and the research institutions, think tanks. For example, our Center on Transition, European Studies and Transition Studies, we study these countries, and we also organize Jean Monnet Center of Excellence conference on Eastern Partnership with focus on research. And I'm very happy that this is something common with your center, because you also focus on the Eurasian countries and Russian studies and the European studies. So it's very nice that countries over the ocean are united in supporting countries that are needed to be supported in their developments in Europe, in Eastern Partnership area, in the neighborhood policy of the European Union.
Well, thank you very much for such an interesting interview. It was Oleg Schindler from the Center for European Studies and Dr. Tatjana Muravska from the Center for European and Transition Studies at Latvian University. Stay with us. Thank you.